Hey, good morning, American Night here. Today is Sunday, March 22nd, 2026. I am got up early this morning, drove over this way to where my parents live, and it's 6 a.m. So I won't drop in on them this early, but I usually do get to their home about 7 a.m. So I stopped and got a little snack, something to drink, and just chilling. I thought I'd go ahead and cut a video while I'm out here. I put one out last night. I'm kind of looking at all of the problems that we're facing right now. Economic issues. Unfortunately, I wish this wasn't the case, but I think we've got bigger problems than the economic issues. Most people are only concerned about the economic issues, but I think our problems are a lot deeper than that. When I look at our society here in the United States, you look at, and I think the same problem persists in other areas of the world too. I think Europe has a lot of these problems as well. I think social media, and I know I'm posting to social media, but I think this really is something to think about. How much time, especially our young people, our kids, are wasting on social media. How important it is. Time is our most precious resource. It's people don't think. They try to save money where they can, but they don't think about the time they're wasting, and it's like time. You don't get it back, and I feel like our generation, probably starting with my generation, Gen X, and going forward, we have wasted so much time in our lives with video games and later on social media and texting and just with screens. We've just been immersed with screens. And where kids don't play outside anymore, and there's just something naturally healthy about kids getting out and playing outdoors and competing, and somewhere along the line that just kind of has, it's still there, but not to the extent that we saw it when I was a kid, back in the 80s. So I think that's something that we really need to work on with our young people. I'm hoping that it's reversible. It's like some of these problems I kind of worry about, especially the amount of time that screen time our young kids are getting. It's not that unusual to see that people are getting 10 to 12 hours a day of screen time. Even myself, if you count my time at work sitting in front of a computer, all of my work is done on a computer in front of a screen. Now, my work does take some brain power. I do have to think through things, and so that helps. But then I add in, okay, how many hours, how much time a day am I listening to YouTube podcasts, or how much time am I looking at? I don't spend as much time on Facebook as I used to. Facebook, I mainly started using it because I could connect with so many of my friends that I'd gotten to know over the years. It was a way to keep touch with those people, and then then Facebook kind of became a place to post all my pictures. I took some trips and things, and I would post those pictures there, and it was almost like a storage place for my pictures. That's what it became there for a while. So I don't use it as much as I used to. But YouTube, I do listen to podcasts. I probably spend maybe 2 hours a day listening to just different podcasts. And I've got to rethink some of that. Yesterday, I told you guys in yesterday's video that I was really trying to get some things done and be a little bit more productive, a little more active. And yesterday morning, I got in the gym about 6 a.m. yesterday morning. And by the time noon rolled around, I had gotten a full body workout. I had cleaned my car. I had done some exterior maintenance on my house, worked on my patio, got my patio. I did the weed eating out there. I did, just a little bit of cleanup on my patio. The winter is, winter comes around and everything kind of dies out there. And springs, it's gotten a little warmer, started getting some plant life growing. So I just had to get some maintenance done out there on the patio. But I got all of that done before noon. And it was just like, man, when I really just buckle down and focus on tasks and getting things done, it's amazing how much I can get done in just a handful of hours. And it made me think about it. I'm like, man, I really need to make this a daily thing, because here I am at 50 and I'm saying that, I'm almost, well, not quite 50, almost another 5 months I'll be there. But as you get older, you start thinking more about time, because you realize your time is starting to slip away. I don't know how long I'll live. It's like my grandparents on my dad's side, my grandfather was 74, my grandmother was 82 when they passed away. Now, they had some health issues. My grandfather had smoked since he was like 12, and my grandmother, she was very overweight, and they may have lived longer if those weren't problems. Fortunately for me, I've never picked up smoking. I've never even tried it. Never done any kind of drugs. I have had bouts of being overweight during my life. Many of you already know that about 1.5 years ago, I had bariatric surgery. I lost almost 100 pounds from that. I think really what it is that we're just so busy here in the United States. We're just so busy working and trying to earn a living. And, we eat convenience foods because it's convenient. We don't have to, stop and cook something, and we don't walk as much. I lived in, when I was younger, I spent 2 years living in southern Spain. And one of the things I really noticed when I got there was how fit everybody was. There were very few overweight people. And the real difference, yes, there are some dietary differences. The food is healthier there. But on top of that, everybody walks everywhere. You could easily live in Spain and not even need a car. In fact, that's one of my reasons I'm considering retiring in Spain later on, because the cost of living is so much lower. You don't have to have a car, which means if you don't have a car, you don't have a car payment, you don't have car insurance, you don't have to pay for gas, you don't have to pay for the maintenance on a car. That alone saves a good bit of money every year. I am highly considering that. I kind of go back and forth on it. I don't know how long I would stay if I did move over there. Maybe it would just be for 2 or 3 years, which would give me the opportunity to travel around Europe and see everything that I want to see in Europe. There's so much over there that I really want to see. I have friends that want to go to Asia. My daughter Ashley, I know she wants to go to Japan and over there in that area of the world. And I've never had a lot of interest in that. I do have a lot of interest in seeing a lot more of Europe. I want to go to England. I want to see Italy. Italy is probably the next country in Europe that I really want to get to. I'm hoping that the Europeans don't destroy Europe before I can get a chance to get over there. All the migrant problems they're having over there. It's not just the fact that there's migrants, but it's all the crime problems and everything that have arisen. When I was living in Europe, most of these European countries had very little violent crime. Violent crimes were almost non-existent in Europe back in the 1990s. Um, you did have like theft, pickpockets, purse snatchers, things like that. That was the extent of the crime in Spain. But and I think that was just in Europe in general. That was most of the crime problems revolved around theft and things like that. But now you've got rape. Occasionally you hear about murders happening. That was just almost unheard of back in the 90s over there in Europe. And it's just because of all these people they've been allowing to come flood into their countries. So that's a problem. That's a problem. I used to really want to go to London. I would really like to see London and see the historical sites of London, but I hear London's pretty sketchy these days. Of course, a lot of American cities are kind of sketchy too, but I'm assuming with England that if you stay in the more touristy areas, there'll be enough law enforcement around, things like that, to avoid too much of a problem. But you do kind of worry about it. It's something to think about. Anyway, I'm just looking at all these problems that we have. We've really got to, focus on our young people. I feel like we've kind of done a disservice in so many ways. I mean, not maybe us individually, but our government, our politicians, our, when I look back on my life, it's like I look at the 1980s. We had a big boom. We had a lot of pro-growth policies out of the Reagan administration, reducing taxes, really trying to focus on building growth in America. I think a lot of the tech boom that we saw in the 90s was a result of the pro-growth policies of the Reagan administration. Democrats, of course, want to give all the credit to Clinton, but Clinton was he came in kind of at the start of the technological revolution. I mean, the technology was emerging as Clinton became president. So really, I give a lot of the credit for that to Reagan and his pro-growth policies. So that was a big part of all of that. But we had that, and then you go into the late 80s and early 90s, you begin to see more of these companies leaving. And American businesses that were born and raised here in our country had no loyalty to our country, to our nation at all. They didn't feel any ties to the country, and they had absolutely no qualms about just picking up and going overseas and moving all their jobs overseas. And so many of these companies are dependent on just, I'm going to say it like slave wages. I mean, when they first started going over to China, they're paying people 50 cents, 75 cents an hour. I don't even know if that should be legal to me. I mean, I think there needs to be, we talk about minimum wage a lot. Maybe there needs to be a global minimum wage so that these countries, to me, it's just like you're almost, it's not slavery because they are earning money, but it's the next thing to it. It's almost like an indentured servitude, that they've got going on. But if you impose some sort of global minimum wage, that might shake up I don't know how you would impose that. Something through the United Nations, if they pass some sort of rules, if all the countries would get on board with that, I don't know. It's just something to think about. But so we saw some problems for our young people in terms of the jobs. A lot of these jobs moving away, and then this life of comfort that we've instilled, in terms of sitting at home in front of a screen, video games. And I mean, I love video games. You know, I remember when I got my first Nintendo, the classic Nintendo. And I actually even remember before that, we had a Commodore 64 computer where we had Pac-Man and a couple of other Frogger and a few other games on that. So, I enjoyed video games. But as I'm sitting here at 50, I think about all the hours spent playing those video games and what I could have been doing if I hadn't been sitting there in front of a screen pressing buttons, right? And it's not bad to enjoy video games, but it's just the quantity of time that you spend on it, right? I always struggled when I was a teenager. I struggled with fitness, and I think if I had instead spent that time in the gym or playing sports outside, or that maybe I wouldn't have had the weight problem I had. And I wasn't super heavy, but I was probably 50 pounds overweight as a teenager, but if I had been more physically active, out playing sports, and that probably would have even helped my self-esteem. I had self-esteem issues as a teenager. I think that just helps build self-esteem as well, getting more physically fit and active. Anyway, all of this is just something to think about. These are thoughts that I'm having, looking back on life and where things have kind of gone off the rails here in the United States. I mean, because it's very apparent, I think, to almost all of us that things have gone off the rails a little bit. Another problem is the relationship between men and women. I don't know what to make of this. When I look at it, I had a lot of, I say that I had a lot of, but that's not really true. I want to say that I had a lot of girls that were friends when I was a teenager, but as I've gotten older, I think that maybe I've noticed that I think that some of these people were more important to me than I was to them. I wasn't really that important to them. I don't think I ever really was. I didn't really mean anything to these people, I think as I've gotten older, I've started to realize that how little I meant to some people that really meant a lot to me, for various reasons, And I think girls sometimes think that we're just physically attracted to them, and that isn't always the case. I mean, there were a couple times where I was pretty hurt, but it is what it is, And I think with men, I think us guys, I think we find somebody, at least this has been my experience with it, is that we find somebody when we're really young, we're really green and we're really young, we don't know what we're doing, and we really fall hard for one individual person, for someone in particular, and then we lose them. And it's just never the same, it's never the same after that. I think that's part of the problem for many. I think that may be one of the problems we're seeing. Girls, for some reason, it just seems to them like they can just jump in and out of relationships, and it doesn't seem to, I don't see the same feelings of attachment or feelings of, I don't know, the really strong connection from women for a guy. It seems like they can just get back into another relationship and just keep trucking, and that's not the way I work anyway. I have struggled with that. I tried I tried to do that. You know what that wound me up with? 2 divorces. That's what it wound me up with. I got married, and when I look back on it, I think after I lost that one person, it's like I should never have gotten married after that. I shouldn't have. I don't think. I think it was doomed from the very beginning, to be honest. Those two marriages, but it is what it is. Live and learn, right? So anyway, some people would say that we have one-itis. I hear them call it one-itis. That there was that one, and it's true. I think a lot of men have that, where there was this one person that you just always thought it was going to. This is it, and then it just slips away. And us guys are not very good at handling that. At least I'm not. That's why I'm single at almost 50 now. It's like I've tried having other relationships, and it's not working. It's not. I should have realized that it wasn't going to work, but especially growing up in the Mormon church, it's like it's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to get married and yada yada yada. I think that was over once I lost her. Just that sort of thing. But anyway, so men and women's relationships these days are a mess. I think men are becoming, I think as women become more liberal, and a lot of American women are more liberal and men are more conservative, it seems like. That's a big part of it. I think men are more traditional. All this LGBTQ stuff, most men are not really that into it, are not that supportive of it. Women are a lot more supportive of it. Men are more, I think, probably a little bit more religious, or more tied to a church, or at least a religious faith. Maybe not a specific church, but at least a religious faith. Women seem to be a little bit more agnostic, atheist. I don't know. There's just a divide there between men and women right now on a lot of different matters, Anyway, I don't know what the answer to all that is. It's not all women either. I know a lot of women that are more conservative leaning and are religious and all of that. So, but I think there's just a bigger number of liberal, agnostic / atheist women than there are men. But that's just my thoughts on it. It's raining right now. I'm in my car. If y'all couldn't tell, I'm just waiting for 6:30 now. I've been on here for 23 minutes, so I guess I'll let you guys go. But I'm just wanting to post a little bit more frequently, and tell me what you think. Post your comments. I will read the comments. We have a lot of problems. I feel like our government worries about problems that are way down the list of importance. This whole Iran thing is just kind of bad timing for that. I know that the Trump administration feels like they had a justification. They've justified it in their own minds. I just feel like the American people are in a different place right now. We want our government to worry about problems, direct problems that we're facing here at home. Cost of living, our economy, jobs. That's what the American people are worried about. They're not worried about things going on over there in the Middle East. I think we're all kind of sick of the Middle East. We've been over there for almost 25 years now, since 9/11, and it's like, aren't we all sick of it yet? We went into Iraq, and then and we went into Afghanistan, then Iraq, and then now we're in Iran. It's like this area of the world has always been a mess. It's like I just don't see that it's going to be. I don't know. I don't know what the best outcome from this is going to be. I mean, I'd love to see Iran going back to the way it was before 1979. But what's the likelihood of that sticking before some other Islamic regime comes to power? It's just, I don't know. Anyway, tell me what you guys think. I will let you guys go. This is the American Knight signing out.